Hey everyone, welcome back to Guide to Tapping In. This birth chart video is going to be on the late actor Paul Walker. I was a longtime admirer of Paul Walker and found him to be just completely gorgeous and a real guy's guy, and I just loved his talent. And when he passed, it was very sad for me as a fan. For some reason, lately I've been thinking of him a lot, so of course I looked up his birth chart and was amazed once again at how accurate astrology is. And I just wanted to share my findings. So let's get into the beautiful soul that he was when he lived amongst us on earth and all that he was. And if you share any placements with Paul, be sure to comment below if you have the same experience that I'm going to describe. This may be a very long video, but it's very informative if you're interested in learning more about astrological placements. So take what you can from this, and if you gain any value, give it a like. Now let's get started. Paul Walker was born in Glendale, California on September 12, 1973, making him a Virgo Sun native. Our sun is who we strive to be in this life. It is our ego, it's our personality. We choose our sun sign before being born so that we can have something to strive for, and it's always the qualities of that sign that we wish to embody. Being a Virgo sun would have made Paul very intelligent and hardworking, very reliable, very solid in character, always wanting to handle things practically, and it would make him have a knack for using his mind to make things work. Virgos are quick thinkers and very sympathetic people. They express their love by doing for others, and they are very helpful and diligent. Paul's moon sign was in Pisces. Your moon is your emotional and reactive nature. It's who you actually are. If your sun is who you want to be and who you are at your most joyful, the moon sign is your natural instinctive nature. And to have moon in Pisces means Paul was naturally compassionate. We're going to see in other parts of Paul's chart how this confidence was his charm, but with a Pisces moon, his confidence wouldn't have been all ego. He would have been a very caring and gentle individual in how he dealt with people, and he would have respected when others were also this way. He probably didn't get along too well with personalities where the person wanted to appear really harsh and uncaring. He definitely would have preferred laid-back people who were compassionate at their souls, as this was his nature as well.
Younger actors who back home anyways have a lot of heat. So my initial concern was I was going to have to deal with some egos, and I don't deal well with egos. So anyways, we all ended up getting along really well, needless to say. Vin and I, it took us a while, I think, to feel each other out. We come from two different worlds, just like as our characters do on the film. He comes from the East Coast, I come from the West Coast. So it took us a while to kind of figure out where one another were coming from. But
Pisces moons are very giving and loving, and people tend to feel very calm in their presence because they make everyone around them comfortable. They want everyone to have good energy because they can be very receptive to others' emotions and don't like to have their spirit razzled by an angry presence. Pisces moon natives would also be very creative. It's a water sign. They do very well in the arts, and they are naturally connected to their emotions and the emotions of others. They can uplift people easily, and certainly Paul had a way with his audience. He was a good actor and very appealing on screen, and in conversation with people, he had a very easy way about him. Paul's Mercury sign, which is the planet of communication and mental process, was in Virgo, meaning he thought and talked like a Virgo. Mercury is exalted in Virgo, so a placement like this means Paul was an excellent communicator and had a very sharp and quick mind and wit. These natives look at the world more realistically than most, and it's because they have the practicality of Virgo so strong in the area of the mind. They think of how things work and how they can make them more efficient. They attain their dreams quicker than most because they have intentional efforts always. They don't waste time, it's a clear and precise mind, and they always strive for efficiency. How can they be better or make a situation better? So sometimes they can be kind of critical, but it's always for the betterment of the project. These people's minds are quick and sharp, so they are also funny and have a sarcastic sense of humor that really can't keep people mad at them, even when they give constructive criticism, because they know they mean well. In terms of love and how Paul loved, his Venus sign is in Libra at 29 degrees. So that's a very strong energy in his chart. And also Venus is in the sign of its rulership in Libra, meaning Paul was a great lover. Libras have a very romantic energy, and to have Venus here means as a lover, Paul was very balanced in his temperament and giving and caring. He just would have made a very good partner and had a lot of love to give. Libras are also very compromising, so Paul would have loved to give and sacrifice when it came to love. It's giving he was a real man. The fact that Venus is so strong in Libra means he would have also had a lot of luck in love. Paul dated a lot. He was very charming and sexy and flirty.
Oh yeah, I had a 1986 Ford Ranger. It was a pickup truck. Yeah, with a shell on the back and a carpet kit. It was good in high school. I made out with a lot of girls in that truck.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jordana.
Yeah. I tell everyone.
Is that a plus?
Yeah, for sure. I tell everyone it's because I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. It's just the way it is. You know, white boy growing up in the San Fernando Valley. That's the way it is. You just end up dating, you know, a lot of Mexican chicks, you know, and yeah, no, pretty fortunate that way. And I think also too the contrast, blonde hair, blue eyes, matching up with blonde hair, blue eyes, it gets old really quick. Trust me, my whole family's blonde hair, blue eyes. You know, you look at the pictures, I'm just surrounded by it. So I've always liked the dark hair, and I like the look, and I think it's more complimentary that way.
That's good for us.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh, I love her right now. Where's she at? I want to give her another kiss.
You'll find her, and for you,
I gotta
go ahead.
No, believe me, I had a great time kissing Jordana. But you know, like going into it with something like that, it's like I have to be intimate with this girl. It's like my first concern was I hope she's attractive, which she was more than. And the second is, you know, I hope that she's a cool girl, she has some substance, and she's not spun on herself. Sure. And no, Jordana's super sweet, and no, that's definitely very flattering that she said that. So. And the instructor that was actually out, you know, like, you know, doing the test with me, checking everything off, was really cute. So I was distracted, and I was talking to her a lot. Next thing I knew, I was halfway into an intersection at a red light, and that was like minus 10 points. But yeah, I made it through though. Faces all the time. It's a friendly place, and I get in there this one day, and different girl. I see her, kind of feel her. She's kind of figuring things out. Yeah, she's cute.
Of course, she's cute.
Anyways, I'm doing the whole thing with Jamie and order my breakfast. I eat. I go up to pay at the end, and I notice this girl's got a tattoo on her wrist, and I got one on my wrist. It's just casual stuff, you know. I'm just like, oh, what's that? What do you got on your wrist? And it says 5. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What's the significance of that? And she turns bright red, and her coworker starts going, tell him. She's like, yeah. She's like, I've got 5. She's like, my friend has fast. I think she's pulling my leg. And then she goes, no, she's like, so much so, she's like, at one point, she's like, we were considering Dom and Brian.
What?
Yeah. They got it tattooed on their wrist.
Oh my God.
That's pretty crazy. I told her, I said, if I was her father, I'd kill her.
But instead, you invited her to the premiere.
Exactly.
Can't be invited to the premiere.
She's got to go, LA.
And he seemed to always have a compliment to give, and it's because he was very sure of himself around people in general. He would have been a people person, a good friend, and very good with other people, especially romantically. He was thoughtful to the opposite sex. This placement would also add to what I said previously about him liking to surround himself with other kind people. Rougher personalities just wouldn't do well with his personality. He was a lover at heart, even if he had some edge. And again, Libra energy is very balanced. So with him having Mercury in Virgo, which is a level-headed sign, he would have always been able to find a middle ground with someone, even if there was conflict. If he couldn't, it probably would have affected him greatly, as he liked to keep good relationships with the Venus in Libra. Libra is very artistic as well, very creative, as it operates on that higher planet of Venus. And so when he was in love or inspired in any way, his creativity was enhanced. Paul worked really well with women in his career, and this would explain that.
And I was so nervous because one day I had this harness like waiting for me, and I was like, what is this for? And we had to do this massive jump.
Let's go.
And Paul was just like, I got you. Like, and there was no way to like not feel safe and comfortable with Paul. And I think that's the energy that everyone felt. So yeah, he made me feel very safe.
It's like I love her. Like I would die for her in a heartbeat.
I had a crush on him more on after like from 4 to like 7. I had a crush on him.
Now his Mars sign was in the sign of Taurus. Your Mars is your drive and passion, and whatever sign colors it explains why you go after the things you do and the kind of things that inspire passion for you, including how you would enjoy sex. So for Paul to be a Taurus Mars, which Mars is a very slow earth sign, it would mean that Paul was not afraid of things taking time. Dedication and persistence would be the way he went after things. Working hard at it and seeing the practical results would have brought him great fulfillment. He would have liked to see the results of his work.
I don't know. I like working. If I'm gonna work, I want to work. I don't want to sit around. You know, I sit around, I twiddle my thumbs. I gotta wait to work. I start getting really irritated. At the end of the day, I want to feel like, hey, that was time well spent, and you know, it was of merit too. You know, and I think a lot of it has to do with my upbringing. My father made me work a different trade every summer. It's just the way it was. He wanted me to learn it all. So my father was a contractor, and I got out there, and it was like, at the end of the day, you could look back and go, whoa, look what I did. You know, movies, you don't have that. You have what you feel you did, but you don't have anything tangible. It's like on this film, or now it's on this digital chip, and it gets sent off. There's nothing to show for it. So, you know, in this one, I think the gauge was the heart, the output, knowing what you feel.
And this even extended to his belongings. So with Taurus, a very materialistic sign, Taurians like to receive. It's a very sensual sign. So to have a Taurian kind of drive means that working hard doesn't bother these natives because they know that they are working for something. They like to see and enjoy the fruits of their labor. So doing a hard job that might turn off other people, a Taurus Mars native would jump on it just for the money.
Yeah, well, I like amusement parks. I think everybody does, but you know, I was working at underpaid slaves at UPS. Yeah. You know, and I was making like, you know, a couple, you know, it was decent money, you know, but it wasn't enough. You know, it's like I had the car. I couldn't, you know, hardly pay for gas sometimes. You know, you take your girl out to a movie on a weekend, you know, dinner, movie, bro, you're bust. You know, you got to work all week just to take her out. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? And you know, you see these bums with signs, you know, hey, you know, give me a buck, you know, whatever it is, and they're dirty and you know, they don't smell really good usually, but people give them money. I give them money, you know. And I'm like going, imagine that, bro. If I were to clean up, take a shower, imagine what I could potentially pull.
Be the opposite of the homeless dude.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you know, the polished version. So then like I start thinking about it and I'm like, bro, happy families, right? Big groups of people. I'm thinking Disneyland, right? I'm thinking maybe not Disneyland. So let's hit the local amusement park, right? I go to the local amusement park and I stand outside the park. I'm like, the story was, hey, look, you know, I'm down from Sacramento. My girlfriend and I are here. You know, we need to get in the park. We're short a few bucks. And I know this sounds really horrible, but, you know, I was falling on some hard times. So, you know, it's like, you know, you get a single here, a single there, right? Well, the next thing you know, it's $5, it's $10. The best part was that when I drove out there, I didn't even have enough money to park in the parking lot. My pockets got so full of cash, I went down, emptied them out in my truck, drove back up, parked in the parking lot. Went back for a second round. Security got me. They're like, bro, you're never coming back here again. So I did good, though. Yeah. You know, and I was like, oh, good, I can go make some more money, and I could raise my daughter, right? And then it turned into this crazy franchise. That wasn't a conscious decision. The decision was more or less made for me. I was at a situation where I'd run out of funding basically for school, and was looking for a means to potentially earn some more income. And the idea was to go back. And you know, good fortune struck. I was quite lucky early on with the audition for Pleasantville. I was in my early 20s at that time, and I thought I'd make one movie and pay off my loans and go back and finish school, and it just hasn't stopped. So.
3 things I love about movies are
Travel, meeting new people, and the downtime.
the downtime.
Everything. My problem is I appreciate them all. Cars are my vice. Like, I collect cars, that's what I do. I love everything about them. And, you know, in this movie you see, oh, there's import guys, there's domestic guys, and there's European guys. I like them all, I have them all, and I will always have multiples of each. It's a big part of my lifestyle. It's a big part of who I am. Things that I'm interested in. I mean, if acting goes really, really well for me, I mean, realistically, I could work like maybe 6-8 months out of the year and have the remainder of the time to pursue my other endeavors. You
gotta,
yeah, I
like
do
your
cattle and horses.
Cattle and
all that
horses,
stuff.
and that's like your dream. Like,
it's not my dream. The dream is to have it all. Who says you can't have your cake and eat it too?
No, who said
live
that?
this life, that life, this life. You know,
so like,
you only live one time. I want to get it all in.
They like to feel stable financially. Passion-wise, these natives are also very sexual and would need to have all their senses stimulated always. Paul was someone who dated a lot and was very flirty, and this would explain that. He liked to have passion in every aspect of his life. Physical contact would have been very fulfilling to him with the Taurus Mars. Having sex, be an intimate and sensuous experience, would have been what he strived for in that area. So that Taurus stability colors everything when you see it in your chart. Paul's Jupiter sign, which is whatever sign Jupiter is in, basically is what you want to embody to receive more luck in your life and generate more opportunities. So Paul's Jupiter sign was in Aquarius, and it's regressive, so it's something that his soul would have really wanted him to focus on. Aquarius Jupiter natives benefit a great deal from making connections through social outreach, community work, etc. Just making meaningful connections and getting around like-minded, humanitarian-natured people generated a lot of blessing for Paul. Paul had a vast network. He had his own charity organizations and had a lot of friends.
And money and things are going well, road can continue, but there's going to come a time where I might not necessarily be able to fund it. And so, to know that there's, the outside interests that are coming in now, to know that there's a good chance that this is something that could potentially be around well after I leave this planet, it's a good feeling. And the like-minded, I think the people that believe in it, because for me it was really just an idea, and as a single person, what's an idea? It doesn't really mean anything. What makes it live and breathe are the people that subscribe to the philosophy and the idea of it, and the people that are involved have just taken it to a completely different level. So
he was an outdoorsman and loved nature, so he made a lot of connections with other people and groups working to help the ocean and help victims of water devastations around the globe. And he found a lot of his luck and opportunities in life through the people he met in his philanthropic space. Aquarians are big thinkers and they love to give of themselves to a greater cause. That's Paul's energy in a nutshell. The relationships don't have to necessarily be super close where you consider each other family. It's more so connecting with people with the same vision and building something beautiful together. That's Aquarian energy.
The giver. 3 or 4 outings. We had one this year. We had the tornado in Tuscaloosa in Alabama. But this year, for the most part, it's been relatively sleepy, which has been nice. But what's happened is there's been a bit of a groundswell. And organically, what's happened is we've had different brands express interest in potentially sponsoring us or helping us with our cause. So the thing that's nice is we put something out there that we believed in, and others have jumped on. Davidoff, for instance, with their donation.
Paul certainly embodied his Jupiter sign and always referred to himself as lucky in interviews.
Just lucky. No,
I'd say arguably this was because he put himself out there and strived to make positive change in the world on a large scale, and he was always in the right place to receive, and therefore was lucky and blessed financially and with great connections, friendships, and travel experiences.
Nice, spending your time doing your hobby as a job. How is that for you?
I don't know. It's just, it's just by chance. I mean, I ended up doing a movie like this one, and to me, it's like pulling that lottery ticket. That's the analogy I use. It's just that's what it was. It's just it's just a lot of fun. Making movies in general is fun. We're getting to do something like this. I mean, being especially that I'm into cars and that sort of thing. It's just the icing on the cake. Which is because how much the people get off, the audience appreciates what we do. There's a lot of things I could be doing outside of the industry, even within the industry, but I don't know if the satisfaction would be the same, because to be a part of something that people really appreciate, as much as maybe certain people hate to admit it, it's important to us, as humans. It's like you want to believe that, what you're putting out there and what you've dedicated so much time to is there's a certain degree of acknowledgement, and more than acknowledgement and appreciation. And, obviously this one's been appreciated for a long time.
Now, Paul's Saturn sign was in the sign of Cancer. Our Saturn sign is where we had restriction, whether in past lives or early childhood, but whatever sign colors Saturn is where we need to practice more discipline and focus so we can be better. Paul's Cancer Saturn means he probably wasn't raised to embrace his emotions, but he has a very caring and loving nature naturally.
So do you think this is a role that maybe you wouldn't have been able to play 5 or 6 years ago?
There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. The way that I was raised and what was going on, I was always cool and tough, and you just, you don't talk about this, you don't talk about that. Even though inside you're feeling it, you just don't know how to, show that, you don't. Especially around a bunch of guys standing around you that are, capable guys.
A sensitive nature, so he would have really benefited from having discipline in who he shared his emotions with, but still finding importance in sharing them. He's obviously a very practical personality, laid-back guy with the Virgo energy in his chart in those areas of expression. But Saturn in Cancer means he was naturally very caring, and showing that part of his nature would have really grew his soul. Cancer is a water sign and very nurturing, and he may have had some feelings of not being understood, so there was a feeling of not feeling one should or could open up to others, and this could have led to having a shell over his emotions, perhaps in the early part of his life. This again would mean he craved stability, and having a home and a family of his own would have really given him a sense of nourishment in his life.
Become G.I. Joes, and the earthquakes and all kinds of stuff.
You said the sweetest comment. You said, without being a father right now, I'd be the most screwed up guy around. I read that in a New York Times article about you. What do you mean? Does she just kind of keep you grounded in the whole Hollywood scene, but you got this little girl?
Yeah, I think it helps you maintain focus, and it just kind of puts everything into perspective.
Does she realize?
He talked a lot about it not being easy raising and building a relationship with his daughter, but you can tell he felt a sense of pride over being a father, and probably had to reconcile a lot of his emotional resistance so he could open up and be the kind of caring presence as a dad that he may have wished he could be.
It wasn't planned. My baby wasn't planned. I wasn't married, out of wedlock, the whole bit, and kind of finding your step with it. I mean, I'm still finding my step. I think you always are. It's like, I'm 5 times the father than I was 5 years ago. Your head's more in it, your heart's more in it. And you can't force it. You want to be better at it, but it just something hasn't clicked yet. And I definitely could parallel a lot of things in this movie. Reluctance, kind of looking at this thing, going, "Who the hell are you? I'm not ready for this." But that's just what you do. You keep going, and you find your way. And sometimes you fall flat on your face, and you get up again. And then they get a little bit older, and you ask them for forgiveness. And then you fall on your face again, and you go, "Just be patient with me, please. This is my first time. I'm figuring this out." So, I don't know. I like it. I mean, it's just, I think it definitely helps that I have a daughter, but I think if you're a human being and you have love in your heart, I think you're going to find connective fibers in this.
It's always interesting having Aquarius anywhere in your chart because it's in his Jupiter sign, so he obviously made a lot of connections with people, but Aquarian energy is very broad. It's not big on one-to-one relations, and you'll often find people with Aquarius energy really heavily in their chart struggle with their emotions in other areas. Now, I don't go over the planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because those are generational planets, and although the world events that were happening as we were growing up do affect us, I want these videos to focus on the individual. So, on to the North Node. North Node are the lessons we wish to learn in this life for soul growth that we tend to learn by releasing our South Node or integrating them in different ways. Paul's North Node was in the sign of Capricorn, making his South Node in the sign of Cancer. We've touched on his natural sensitive nature before. He may have had past life experience in using his emotions over his logic, and it may have caused some problems that he needed to rebalance in this life with the energy of Capricorn. Cancer energy is very nurturing, as I said before. It's probably the most nurturing zodiac, and Paul may have focused too much on giving in another life and not enough on himself. So this time around, North Node was placed in Capricorn to give him stronger will to achieve personal goals and success for himself, not just for others. So not sacrificing his ambitions and really making a clear path and sticking to it would have really been necessary for his soul growth. And it also explains why he was blessed with those placements that indicated a clear mind and precise thinking. It's as if he was given the gift of intellect and focus so that he can make use of it for the pursuit of his goals and help others on a grand scale once he was successful, which is also why his Saturn was in Cancer. He needed to learn how to express his emotions properly, not withhold them entirely, but practice discipline with expressing them rationally and when necessary. Because too much emotion and having too strong of a responsibility for people, especially family, can hinder what you do for yourself.
He donated to my nonprofit. He didn't even tell me.
He did take care of people to the point where he wasn't looking after himself.
Success is balance in life. That's the most difficult thing to find.
This also explains why being nurtured and taken care of is very special to him in terms of love. His very balanced Libra Venus would crave that balance in love. So he's not only giving but receiving a lot of affection. That is what's important to him. This would also explain his love for stability and the need to feel safe. It's his nature to have something to connect to always, whether that's his hometown, his roots. In some way, he'd like to know he had stability always, and that's due to the Cancer South Node.
Still the same friends that I've had for, years. Guys I went to high school with.
This placement certainly explains his very likable nature. He was clearly good with people because he had this sensitive undercurrent and he was naturally thoughtful of others. But at the same time, his life lessons in this life taught him to stand on his own 2 feet and make something of himself and to focus on himself. And that is going to make for a leader that leads with love and compassion. So he was a lovable guy because he had that confidence that comes from self-assurance from doing your own thing, but also very outwardly caring, and it made him trustworthy and magnetic to others. Paul's Chiron, the wounded healer, was in the sign of Aries and was also regressive. So it's a wound he really wanted to heal quickly and move on from to live out his mission. To have Chiron in Aries means that Paul again may have had to learn to heal this need to always do for others at a detriment to himself. It could have come from the fact that he was from a big family. I believe it was 5 children in the house. And when it's a big family, everyone has their role. They assume, and one's own needs can get lost because there's this role you play within the family and this fear that if you don't play that role, then things can go wrong, even if it's not necessarily true. So he would have had to learn to find his worth within himself as opposed to in relation to what he can do for others and relying on that validation from close relationships. Paul's his ascendant was in Virgo. So when people first meet him or saw him, he would appear to be a person with specialized interest or a penchant for specific things. We talked a lot about Virgo's connection to the mind and intellect. So upon meeting someone with a Virgo ascendant, one would get the impression that this person has a breadth of knowledge.
Your cards have said that you know a lot about everything. You just have a lot of facts. Can you tell us a random fact for the day?
Wait, you're just hitting me that broad like that? Random? Yeah, I'll do it. It's the right car. Everything, I have cars that put out plenty of power and everything, but what limits you is aerodynamics. And
although he had a very chill demeanor, Paul himself said he repressed a lot. And upon meeting new people, he probably wasn't all the way open. He was charming and knew how to talk to people, indicating he was a more extroverted personality, but he probably had a tendency to analyze situations and people. We talked before about how he perhaps had a natural tendency to care for people to his own detriment. So he probably put up a wall when meeting new people and didn't let people in too easily so he could establish boundaries for himself. But because he was such a good communicator, it probably wouldn't have been noticed too much. You probably would have just thought, this is a deep thinker, or wow, he's really smart. I know he had a lot of specialized interests like in cars, the ocean, natural disasters, relief, etc. So this definitely is a big indicator of a Virgo ascendant. And finally, Paul's midheaven was in the sign of Gemini. Our midheaven is our most outwardly placement. It's our highest placement. It's our social image and reputation and career. To have midheaven in Gemini, Paul was seen as someone who could do a lot of things and who had multiple interests and was very intelligent or well-versed in a lot of things.
I can do the most. I can surf and I can skate and I can play volleyball and do all that stuff. Those guys can't do that. So it's all a matter of how what you value, I guess. I race cars. Yeah. I can drive better than everybody else.
We know that Paul went to school to study marine biology and also acted and modeled and did philanthropy work and raced cars and went diving and surfed and was a big dog person and fished and did archery, and the list can go on and on.
The guy macho thing for you?
Not a macho thing. It's funny. It's like I grew up hunting and fishing, and like I've always been into archery. I've always been into cars, and it's like they're associated. They're kind of. It always comes down to, those are macho. Those are like real guy things to do. And my family, that was just stuff we did. Like that's just the way it was. So, car racing, like growing up, all the different car publications around the house. Get pretty extreme behind the wheel, but of course that's on a track and all that stuff. So
very well trained.
Yeah, so, no, actually, I race. I spend a lot of time on the racetrack. So, you know, that's a big hobby of mine now. Yeah, so what did you think of the Evo 8? And I go, no, actually, it was an Evo 7, you know, and I'll talk about the exhaust, you know, and the turbos that we put on it, and the boost controller, and the model numbers, and this and that. And that's when they stop and kind of take a step back, and they go, well, this guy, he's into this sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So. Because you are into this, you know, on the set you.
And we're doing this stuff with Marlin, and we're catching, we're tagging them, releasing them, putting all kinds of electronic equipment on them. Yeah. And Michael Dolmeyer, super cool guy, just a mastermind. I mean, the guy's just brilliant when it comes to billfish, you know, when it comes to shark, elephant, seal. He is the go-to guy. Okay. And he looks at the boat and he's like, "You think you can get a great white shark on there?" And the ship's unique. It's got this crazy platform. You got your mask on, and like you can see what's going on. Like you're in their world. Born with a sword in their hand, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that you'd go there and whoop them. So we're gonna have you scrambling a lot.
So you had to look uncoordinated, right?
Well, not uncoordinated, thank goodness, because I wouldn't have enjoyed doing that one.
I know you're a really extreme sports kind of guy, right? What do you do? I know you drive fast cars. We saw that in the Fast and Furious, and you do that in real life too.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. You know.
What else? What other kind of daring?
Well, I grew up in Southern California, so basically everything that goes with that.
Yeah, but that's beach volleyball and surfing.
Yeah,
that's
surfing, but it gets extreme when you're surfing big waves and snowboarding. I love snowboarding and I skate a lot.
Skateboarding?
Yeah, I skate a lot. But lately my thing is actually roping. I've been riding horses a lot. It's something I've always wanted to do from the time I was a little kid, and so I started riding, a lot of trail riding.
Did you buy a horse?
No, I'm actually borrowing one right now.
You're borrowing a horse?
Yeah, but
even at the end of his life, he took an interest in birding and botany and expressed interest in being an EMT first responder.
For it, they give you a lot more attention and are willing to really kind of walk you through things. So, you know, from EMT certification to potentially now I'm considering, you know, maybe even going to school to becoming a paramedic, which would be the next step for me. So we'll see.
He was seen as very cool for the fact that he had his hands in multiple pots and really was a passionate person. It was part of his reputation, his love for all those things, and the work he did in every area he was interested in. He certainly had a curiousness about life and a passion for learning, and it was evident throughout his life and career. He mentioned in an interview his dad made him learn a new trade every summer growing up, and this would have certainly aided in his love for trying new things.
A lot of it has to do with my upbringing. My father made me work a different trade every summer. It's just the way it was. He wanted me to learn it all. So my father was a contractor, and I got out there, and it was like at the end of the day, you could look back and go, whoa, look what I did.
And that is all for Paul's planet placements. Now we're going to dive into the areas of his life, his houses. So his first house is his most active. The first house is all about identity. It's how we view ourselves and how others view us. It's how we carry ourselves. Paul had 3 planets here. For starters, he has Sun here. Sun is our ego and identity. So having Sun in your first house indicates a very confident person, someone who is very sure of themselves, has no qualms that others may have about how they appear to others. They are totally themselves, totally confident, and really good in front of people. They handle attention well and enjoy it.
These are over. Do you want to put that aside? Would you like to get off those covers?
No, not necessarily. I mean, because the bottom line is they keep me working, you know? Yeah. And no, it's been fun. I've had a great time.
And they have a lot of charisma. People are very drawn to them as they shine their inner light through their personality with no problem, and they are very exciting personalities. This high level of confidence would have made Paul a very lucky person because he had the self-assurance that others struggle with to grab every opportunity to come his way. To have healthy confidence in oneself, you'd see the beauty in every opportunity offered to you because you'd feel that you deserve it, and that's usually something most humans struggle with, but not a Sun and first house native.
You can't do it. There's no script. There's nothing. And then
you didn't listen to their advice.
You were right.
I got lucky. But it was just, you know, following your heart kind of thing. Yeah. And it wasn't even about down the road. It was about living in the moment, and got lucky. And I told him I always liked the idea of playing an undercover cop. And he knew that I liked cars. I got a phone call just a few months later from Neil and Universal, and they said, hey, look, this is the idea. It's about modern-day drag racing. You play an undercover cop. And against the advisement of my representatives, I signed on without a script in good faith that it would come together well. And I'm glad I did.
And
nice, you know, spending your time doing your hobby as a job. How is that for you?
I don't know. It's just, you know, it's just by chance. I mean, I ended up doing a movie like this one. And you know, like to me, it's like pulling that lottery ticket. You know, that's the analogy I use. It's just that's what it was. You know, it's just you know, it's just a lot of fun. Making movies in general is fun. We're getting to do something like this. I mean, being especially that I'm into cars and that sort of thing. It's just, you know, the icing on the cake.
A lead in the film.
Yeah, you know, it was, the way it came about was really kind of bizarre. Like I told you, you know, they came to me and basically they just presented this idea. That's all it was at the time, was an idea, and they got it from a newspaper article. And they didn't even have a screenplay. They didn't have anything. They just had the premise. I mean, they knew what it was going to be about, but nothing more. And my representatives right off, I mean, they could tell that I was interested, and I was more than interested. I was really excited about the idea. And they said to me, they said, Paul, so are you considering doing this? And I could tell they're really leery because that's a big no-no. You don't attach yourself to a project without reading the script first. But, you know, my mind was telling me no, you know, but my heart was saying, hell with it, just go for it. And so I did.
And you did a great job.
Thank you.
So it paid off.
This is a brave person who isn't scared to try something for their greater good. They love their freedom and individuality, and their mind will be blessed because of this. So good mental health is usually reflected with this placement as well, because the sun reflects our vitality and energy levels. In the house of identity, the sun would have given Paul versatility in his self-expression, really aiding his work as an actor and as someone who puts himself out there. Paul also had Mercury in his first house, making him a dynamic communicator. He would have been exceptionally good at talking to people, a true extrovert, someone who could talk a lot and was very intelligent, so carried good conversation. It's one of the first things you would have noticed about Paul as reflected in his Virgo ascendant as well. The wit is quick and people love listening to them. Mercury here also indicates a very pleasing voice. Under any video of Paul Walker online, you'll see comments with people saying that they love his voice. It's a very sexy voice, very California, and very Southern California in accent. Someone who clearly has spent a lot of time with different races and is very confident and comfortable talking to anyone.
Did you blend in with everybody, or was it just?
Yeah, you know, the trick was, you know, you just kind of, you know, I'm a chameleon, bro. You know, I was born and raised there. Maybe I was a bit of a surfer, but, you know, my Dickie shorts were down to here. You know, a lot of pressed white T-shirts. Yeah. You know, fresh out of the pack. You know, clean shoes, socks up to about here, bro. And this is how you stand, dog. You stand like that.
It's a very cool demeanor reflected in his voice. This person would love talking and sharing all that he's learned, and a love for learning and being curious was definitely one of his traits reflected in his chart. It also could have indicated he had a shorter attention span, interested in a plethora of things, but overall a very good and exciting speaker, someone who could find a common denominator with anyone in conversation. He often spoke about his upbringing around the Mexican community in Southern California where he was raised, and he had a wide variety of friends from different backgrounds.
And I think most of the time, I think it's deserved. These are people that are used to being pampered, and I like to think that's what separates me from a lot of these other guys. I like to mix it up. I mean, I'm just one of the guys. I mean, I grew up, you know, snowboarding, skateboarding, doing all like the Southern California stuff. You know, you're walking around on set and the grips, you know, the guys basically setting up all these lights and everything. They don't know how to take or how to handle you. But, you know, when they see that you're up for it and you're down, you like to take your lickings and get beat up a little bit. It just kind of makes you one of the boys. So I like doing it for that reason, too.
Paul is what you consider the epitome of a white boy, and I'm all American Negro. And I'm from the hood. And Paul is from Huntington Beach, out there where they surf at and do all of the crazy white boy things. I mean, Paul is crazy, man. We be fighting and wrestling and all kind of slapping each other on the neck, man, forehead, just crazy.
And lastly, for the first house, Paul also had Pluto. Pluto is a very powerful, dominant, and magnetic planet, and wherever it is placed causes transformation. To have Pluto in the first house means Paul had a very magnetic and powerful presence. This presence is so strong, usually due to a traumatic childhood. Not much is known about Paul's upbringing, so we won't speculate, but this intense aura would have been very obvious to people upon meeting Paul. He would have been hard to ignore, and upon meeting him, people would have immediately sensed that he was more than just a pretty face. Pluto here indicates a very strong charisma. It's the strongest that you could have as a placement, and Paul was very charismatic. He seemed to leave a very good impression on everyone he met. However, with Pluto here, there is a sense of danger about these natives. Paul spoke once in an interview that he had a dark side, and people would have sensed that upon meeting him, a certain edge or mysteriousness, a recklessness that would have been a part of who he was naturally and would have shown through in his personality.
What would you do? What kind of film would you do?
You know, it's funny because I have a dark side. So I did this movie called Running Scared, which was really dark, hard R, a lot of violence.
Really?
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people had major issues with it because they think it's I don't know, it's like it almost glorifies it, or it is too embracing. But the thing of it is, it's so funny about violence and language and all that. I think it makes people uncomfortable is because people don't want to accept the fact that we are all capable of such horrible things. And so, as opposed to suppressing it and burying it, no, let's embrace it. Let's see it for what it is. Let it be horrible. Let it be shocking. Let the reminder be right in your face so that you never go to the dark side. For me, it's like, I know that I suppress a lot of things through life and experiences, and you know, you want to be the better person. Maybe you bottle up too much. For me, as an actor, it's therapeutic. I get out so much toxicity and so many horrible things that maybe were buried way, way down in here, and at the end of the day, I'm completely exhausted. At the end of the shoot, I'm completely beat. But it's been a ride. It's been a roller coaster ride. I did that movie, and a girlfriend of mine came out to visit. She was going to spend 2 weeks with me. She spent 4 days and said, I don't even know who you are right now. I'm going home. 4 days.
Could not take it.
No, I couldn't take it. For the longest time, like I pondered, I couldn't figure out just what it meant about me. Like I thought that maybe something was seriously wrong, that I enjoyed that experience so much. But you know, over the last say like 5, 6, 7 years, and reflecting and looking back and understanding myself now better, I'm like, well, it was just an exercise. You know, I enjoyed being able to go in there and just root out all that nastiness, and it's all on screen. And some people appreciate it. I don't know if they're twisted or maybe they're just like
Fast and Furious together, and we did Fast and Furious 2 together. Paul is one of the hardest working guys I know.
My man, Paul Walker, that's a crazy guy right there. He likes having fun.
I was already exposed to it. I'd go to the races. I went to a high school here in the San Fernando Valley, California. And that was the thing. Wednesday nights, you'd run out, you go see the races. So I do it all the time. And it's just like how you see it in the movie. The cops would come, run, get in your car. Cops don't really chase after you too much because the last thing they want is you speeding out of there, crashing into people. They just kind of let you go. But no, I was really familiar with it. So, you know, I kind of played stupid, to be honest with you, because I knew, you know, that they wanted us to do a lot of like research, I guess, character development and whatnot. But so I was like, oh, really, drag races? Oh, okay, I guess I could go do that. I knew exactly what it was all about, and yeah, I was actually really hoping that the cops were going to show up and we were going to get to run, because that's really what it's all about. It's fun. I mean, your heart's pounding. You know, you got the badge behind you. You know, it's foot race. I ended up on the freeway, like a guy chasing after me. That's the fun part. But no, you're right. And I had a couple of them growing up. I had Vagrant, because you know I was the guy who was always passing out in the corner.
That was your nickname, Vagrant?
Yeah. And then from there it turned into Gumby. And then Gumby was like, I was a kid that was always wadding it up, like doing something stupid, and you know, I'd stack it up really bad, whether it was on motorcycles or skating or whatever, and I'd walk away from it. I'd never break anything. And you know, my mother one time, she really got after me. We were skating. This is up in like La Crescenta, you know, and there's a lot of steep hills. And so we're bombing through intersections. I mean, you're going like 35, 40 miles an hour downhill. You know, and you get to Foothill Boulevard, and you're praying to time the light that when you get there, it's green, right? Because there's no stopping, you know? And so I got there, and it was red, and I just, you know, and you get through it, and I get home, and my mother's like, hey, what were you doing tonight? I was little. I'm like, oh, I was just hanging out with my friends. She's like, oh, so that wasn't you I almost hit on Foothill Boulevard.
Someone who, although charming, was not to be reckoned with.
And on the daily, trying to experience it to the fullest.
Never back down mindset, you know, go big or go home.
He's just a kid from Selma to Hunger, you know, the gun-toting hippie, balance of opposites, you know, a lover and a fighter.
He got in a lot of fights when he was younger. Didn't lose very many fights.
Pluto also shows where we find our power, and Pluto in the house of identity means Paul found his strength from within. Growing up, he may have felt rejected in some way. We talked already about him coming from a big family. Maybe he had strict parents, but either way, it made him very resilient, and he learned to find his power from within, not from others' validation. These natives are very strong as they went through a lot emotionally as children, and until healed, they may engage in criminality or aggressive behavior as they sort through their issues.
I'm older. I don't like thinking that. But I think with being older, I'm wiser. So, you bring more life experience, I think, to it.
Paul often admitted to doing very dangerous things and liking risks and participating in illegal racing growing up in Southern California, and it may have been a way to release this withheld intensity he carried due to his emotional nature. Now, Paul's second house is his second most active house, containing 2 planets. Our second house is the area of our life surrounding money and our ideas about money, as well as ideas about ourselves and how deserving we feel of money and resources. The sign coloring the second house usually reflects how we make our money. So Paul's second house is in the sign of Libra, meaning he loved spending his money on his idea of luxuries. There probably wasn't a big attachment to money beyond what it could provide, and that is the freedom and ability to buy nice things or travel and see the world.
Oh, yeah. I had a 1986 Ford Ranger. It was a pickup truck. Yeah, with a shell on the back and a carpet kit. It was good in high school. I made out with a lot of girls in that truck.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
3 things I love about movies are
Travel, meeting new people, and the downtime.
the downtime.
That wasn't a conscious decision. The decision was more or less made for me. I was at a situation where I'd run out of funding basically for school, and was looking for a means to potentially earn some more income. And the idea was to go back. And good fortune struck. I was quite lucky early on with the audition for Pleasantville. I was in my early 20s at that time, and I thought I'd make one movie and pay off my loans and go back and finish school, and it just hasn't stopped. So the passion for marine biology is still there, and that's my first passion, so I still find other ways to fulfill that.
Everything. My problem is I appreciate them all. Cars are my vice. Like, I collect cars, that's what I do. I love everything about them. And in this movie you see, there's import guys, there's domestic guys, and there's European guys. I like them all, I have them all, and I will always have multiples of each. It's a big part of my lifestyle. It's a big part of who I am.
Learning a balance with money as expressed by Libra would have been helpful. So this explains him having Uranus in this house as well. Uranus is a very fast-moving planet and means that he enjoyed, again, the personal freedom that money gave him, and that he often got money very quickly and could sometimes spend it just as quickly. Or talking in the entire chart, we know that Paul really valued stability, so perhaps Uranus's presence here just meant that he got his money in sporadic ways as he was an actor. Actors usually get their money due to appearances in movies and TV, and it's not always a guaranteed steady paycheck unless you're actively working, so Uranus makes sense for his profession. He also had the very beautiful Venus here in his house of possessions. Venus is probably the best placement to have in the second house. It indicates a lot of luck with money. Money comes very easily and often through little effort. We talked before about how the second house isn't just how we make money, but our self-belief about what we deserve, what we feel we deserve in regards to money. And to have Venus here indicates that Paul had a very high self-regard and knew he deserved the best, and that's undoubtedly why he was able to achieve wealth in his life. The major key in achieving abundance is often due to how much we feel we deserve. We always receive the manifestation of what we believe about ourselves. And with Venus here, Paul had a healthy self-confidence that afforded him the luxuries in life. Venus in second house people usually become wealthy. It's a very lucky placement in finances. Another reason being that they work towards luxuries. We talked about his innate need for stability financially and his enjoyment of the finer things in life and whatever that meant to him. Luxury and freedom were very important, and he tended to work successfully at achieving that.
Things that I'm interested in. I mean, if acting goes really, really well for me, I mean, realistically, I could work like maybe 6-8 months out of the year and have the remainder of the time to pursue my other endeavors.
And obviously with Venus, there is creative and artistic talent. And in the second house, one would get their money by means of entertainment in the arts or humanities. It also means that Paul worked well with women, and we do know he did from all the films he did with women. His co-stars always spoke very highly of his character. Paul's third house, which is the house of communication and early life, such as relations to siblings and people in the neighborhood, is in the sign of Scorpio, making him a very magnetic speaker and could have made his nature more quiet when he was young. It also contains the planet Neptune. Neptune is a very dreamy planet, and it means Paul had a deep and broad imagination, and that when young, he was possibly shy and sensitive. Always wanting to understand where everyone was coming from in conversation, and often catered to others more than shared his own thoughts when in conversation. It's a very genuine and charming and kind energy, very thoughtful of others. Neptune here may have led to absent-mindedness growing up, or a struggle with boundaries as he was too mindful of others' emotions. We talked about Cancer being his South Node and how he was naturally very thoughtful even to his own detriment. As a kid, that would have been really strong until healed. It also indicates a strong artistic talent. Obviously, Paul was an actor. He would have always had a big imagination and creative ways of expressing himself, and it would have helped him a great deal as a child. Third house, as I said, also rules siblings, and Neptune could mean either he had artistic siblings or he felt a disconnect from his siblings growing up. He had a big family, perhaps he got lost sometimes. Paul's fourth house was in the sign Sagittarius and contained his North Node. We previously spoke about Paul's emotional capacity and how he would have had great sensibilities naturally that he had to work on comfortably expressing while also exercising boundaries.
But I really went to a place that I didn't think I could go on that one. But I think what happens, it's just life experience.
Yeah.
It just makes you better, you know? Okay. It does. There's no way. The way that I was raised and what was going on, I was always cool and tough, and you don't talk about this, you don't talk about that. Even though inside you're feeling it, you just don't know how to, show that, you know?
North Node here just emphasizes that. It means that the life area of family and how one relates to family is a new focus with his life, and that the key to balancing his life with respect to work and family and himself is a life lesson in itself. He may have worked hard in a previous life and didn't leave much time for family, or he may have spent too much time worrying about them that he did not focus on his own care. So he may have been very sensitive coming in because he wanted to overcompensate for a past life of too much focus or too little self-focus, too much family focus or too little. And Paul often spoke on challenges he had raising his daughter. She lived with him in her teenage years before he passed, and toward the end of his life, he felt they finally came to a good balance, indicative that he may have finally resolved that area of his life with respect to that work-play life lesson by the time he died.
Become G.I. Joes, and there's earthquakes and all kinds of stuff.
You said the sweetest comment. You said, without being a father right now, I'd be the most screwed up guy around. I read that in a New York Times article about you. What do you mean? Does she just kind of keep you grounded in the whole Hollywood scene, but you got this little girl?
Yeah, I think it helps you maintain focus, and it just kind of puts everything into perspective.
Does she realize what you do for a living?
Reluctance, kind of looking at this thing going, who the hell are you? I'm not ready for this, but that's just what you do. You keep going, and you find your way. And sometimes you fall flat on your face and you get up again, and then they get a little bit older and you ask them for forgiveness. And then you fall on your face again. You go, just be patient with me, please. This is my first time. I'm figuring this out. So, I don't know. I like it. I mean, it's just, I think it definitely helps that I have a daughter, but I think if you're a human being and you have love in your heart, I think you're going to find connective fibers in this.
Well, I still didn't really even know who I was making this movie. I had a 2-year-old daughter, and there was a lot going on, and I didn't feel like I had any control of my life. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, but I like to believe now that, I'm a little bit more in control, but I'm definitely a lot better with rolling with the punches and kind of dealing with things as they come my way.
So this fourth house just ties into what we already discussed about Paul and how finding a balance for his emotional nature would have been his greatest challenge. Paul's fun house, aka the fifth house, was in the sign of Capricorn and contained the benevolent Jupiter. Jupiter is the most expansive planet, and the luckiest planet, and to have it in the house of fun, children, and dating means Paul liked a good time. Certain activities that may have scared others would have been thrilling for him, and he had a great love for adventure and new things.
A bunch of actors racing around in cars, doing, maybe 80, 90 miles an hour, and they're standing there with the C-stand, for the actor to lose control and take them out. So, that was just one of the bonuses to me.
Driving. I mean, tell us about that adrenaline rush. And are you finding yourself late at night, nobody else around, taking the streets on?
I've always been like that. I've always had a lead foot. Contact the California Department of Motor Vehicles and they'll tell you. Yeah, I have a lead foot. I'm a bit of a rush junkie, if you will. I grew up driving fast cars. I grew up, I'm a thrill seeker. So this was really right up my alley. And so it was easy for me to really relate and kind of get into the character and his whole mindset once he really got the bug and his first taste of speed in this movie. And, that was the other thing I think that was really great about this is that, I'd already worked with Rob before. We were doing about 80 miles an hour. I didn't actually do the jump, but at 80 miles an hour, I was standing on the door jamb with a Supra. I love doing that stuff.
That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, but
80 miles.
Yeah, it's fun though. It's one of those things where, either you could sit around and then be completely bored, stuck in your trailer, or you can get out there and do it yourself. And I'm into extreme sports myself. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and to be honest with you, if I wasn't an actor, for all I know, I'd probably be a stuntman. So I love doing that stuff.
But yeah, I'll do it. It's the right car. Everything I have cars that put out plenty of power and everything. But what limits you is aerodynamics. And I haven't broken 200 yet.
He was probably always curious and always learning about something, always needing to experience something new. It was fulfilling, and it would have been great with kids because kids can sense the fun in an adult, and Paul would have had a great capacity for a good time. It's also a lucky planet, so often his great adventures led to opportunities for himself. He probably found that when he pursued his creative interests and hobbies, he was very lucky and things happened quickly.
Nice, spending your time doing your hobby as a job. How is that for you?
I don't know. It's just, it's just by chance. I mean, I ended up doing a movie like this one, and to me, it's like pulling that lottery ticket. That's the analogy I use. It's just that's what it was. It's just a lot of fun. Making movies in general is fun. Getting to do something like this. I mean, being especially that I'm into cars and that sort of thing. It's just the icing on the cake.
Abundance follows very fast behind these individuals as they are often engaged in enriching creative pursuits that fulfill one's lives with connection and resources. Romance and creativity are also very enriching for this person's life, and he'd found great satisfaction in doing what he loved. There's a confidence here in things working out, even if they're different.
But no, you're right. And I had a couple of them growing up. I had Vagrant, because I was a guy who was always passing out in the corner.
That was your nickname, Vagrant?
Yeah. And then from there it turned into Gumby. And then Gumby was like, I was a kid that was always wadding it up, like doing something stupid, and I'd stack it up really bad, whether it was on motorcycles or skating or whatever, and I'd walk away from it. I'd never break anything.
You can't do it. There's no script. There's nothing. And then
You didn't listen to their advice.
You were right.
I got lucky. But it was just, following your heart kind of thing. Yeah. And it wasn't even about down the road. It was about living in the moment, and got lucky.
Dangerous and different. Risks don't scare these natives. Paul's sixth house was empty, but was in the sign Aquarius. Our sixth house reflects how we are at work and how we handle practical matters, like on a day-to-day basis, and also our health. To have Aquarius energy coloring this area of life means Paul was friendly and informal at work and with his colleagues. He would have loved when, as I said before, he was surrounded by good-natured beings and liked that at work as well. Aquarian energy is all about the whole, so he would have enjoyed collaborative projects. He also acted for a living, so this would be the epitome of collaboration, but liked when the whole was working properly, so that flow of work would have been important to him, and where there was any conflict or when someone wasn't doing their part and it affected the whole project, he probably couldn't stand it, and he thought of it as probably, incohesive. And he actually talks about this in an interview.
It was good. It was good in the sense, too, that I knew that we were going to start on time. I knew that I was going to know my lines and what needed to be done. You work on the big ones, and sometimes people don't always show up on time. You know.
So you only have to worry about
People don't
yourself.
always know what they're supposed to do that day. Yeah. And I can be responsible for myself and nothing more. I don't know. I like working. If I'm gonna work, I want to work. I don't want to sit around. You know, I sit around, I twiddle my thumbs. I gotta wait to work. I start getting really irritated. At the end of the day, I want to feel like, hey, that was time well spent and money, and things are going well. You know, road can continue, but there's gonna come a time where I might not necessarily be able to fund it. And so, you know, to know that there's, you know, the outside interests that are coming in now, to know that there's a good chance that this is something that could potentially be around well after I leave this planet, it's a good feeling. And the like-minded, I think the people that believe in it, because for me it was really just an idea. And as a single person, what's an idea? It doesn't really mean anything. What makes it live and breathe are the people that subscribe to the philosophy and the idea of it. And the people that are involved have just taken it to a completely different level. So.
Aquarian energy also loves technology that makes things more efficient and easier for everyone. And so Paul would have loved new technology and using interesting things at work to get the cool shot.
Be an old school car.
No.
No?
No, I like old school stuff, but I'm more of a performance guy. And it's like that old school kind of appeal. Like I like it, but I like modern day technology. I like going fast, and I like, you know, I like precision. Old school cars.
And he certainly enjoyed being an actor because this is another placement that indicates a love for doing different things.
What's the most fun thing about acting is you get to be just about whatever. You know, I've been a basketball player, a football player, a soccer player. I've been a police officer. I mean, it's just fun. It's like living out your fantasies.
These natives love doing multiple things that all lead to a goal of serving humanity in some way. So they're true philanthropists, and Paul certainly was.
I want every experience to be the best it can possibly be. And I do the best work that I can possibly do. And with each and every passing movie that I'm in, I feel like I'm getting better, I'm improving. And I like that about it because I'm super competitive with myself. And, you know, I like that there's always room to grow. And, you know, I think really all I can hope is that, like, I love nothing more than when people come up to me on the streets and they're like, especially the little kids, and they're like, dude, I love Fast and the Furious or whatever it is. That feels really good. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where I was a little kid, and I remember going to Star Wars, you know, the very first one, and thinking that was the coolest thing. Like, that was all time. I ran home, I got my lightsaber, and nowadays it's like, I don't know, to even know that there may be one or two people that look at you and the way that I looked at Luke Skywalker, and to think that, man, that guy's really cool, or I'd really like to do what he does. I like that.
In terms of health, with Aquarius coloring the 6th house, Paul would have measured his health by his state of his mental. As long as he was fulfilled by channeling his energy through completing his projects and serving others in genius and efficient ways, he probably felt good. If he didn't properly use his energy, he would have been an excessive thinker, as indicated by his strong mental placements, and it could have resulted in nervousness. But generally, these natives like to find interesting ways to stay healthy, as they're so curious about nature.
You do laugh a lot. How'd you get your washboard stomach, Paul? I don't know if Ronnie's a guy or a girl.
Yeah, me either. I don't know, I just
Sit-ups?
No, I'm just lucky.
You're just lucky. Yeah, he's genetically blessed.
And I'm active, play a lot of sports, I think that helps.
Yeah,
You know?
surfing and stuff.
Yeah, but I've always just been lean, and that's just luck of the draw.
Lean, mean fighting machine.
That's right.
Now, Paul's 7th house, which is the house of partnerships and marriage and close one-on-one relationships, is colored by the sign Pisces and contains the moon. Whatever sign sits in the 7th house of relationships is usually the opposite of who we feel we are. It's what we unconsciously or consciously look for in our long-term relationship partners or other half. Paul having Pisces here would indicate that when looking for a girlfriend, Paul was probably inclined to very sensitive, dreamy women, usually artistic women, because he felt he was a person with both feet on the ground, someone practical and earthy who achieved material success due to hard work. He probably liked having women in his life who were more in the clouds in their sensibilities, women who flew by the seat on their pants. As stability was so necessary for Paul, he may have liked a woman who was hard to figure out. Women with emotional issues or even drug issues can be implicated with Pisces. But dreamy women whose energy was not based in reality, would have been his preference. So if not the negative manifestation of an addicted person or someone with emotional issues, then the positive manifestation would have been a spiritual woman or a woman who was creative in some way, very soft in nature and compassionate, typically needing help in some way, because Paul was trying to work out the proper way to deal with his emotions in this life. He would have been attracted to women who were often overly emotional and sensitive as a way for him to grow and learn in that area. And also because he had so much Virgo energy, he would have liked to have had someone he could provide for, who would appreciate his efforts, as he was a practical guy. Also, having Moon here means he had a lot of emotional fulfillment from his relationships. Being cared for by a loving, nurturing woman, and also loving and nurturing a woman, would have really helped to heal his inner child. Overall, he was probably a hopeless romantic. Astrology is very interesting for this reason. The fact that you can even accurately describe what someone would be interested in based on certain placements is very interesting. So Paul's 8th house is colored by the sign Aries and contains Chiron. The 8th house is mysterious, but I view it as the house of transformation, how we deal with changes and the effect of change in our lives. With Aries coloring such a house, Paul would have probably been someone very interested in growth. He probably had a big desire for growth and change and wasn't scared of confronting his shadow self as much as others.
I do the best work that I can possibly do, and with each and every passing movie that I'm in, I feel like I'm getting better, I'm improving, and I like that about it because I'm super competitive with myself, and I like that there's always room to grow.
Aries is the initiator sign, and he probably had no apprehension of going deep within himself to create change. Moving forward always would have been important. The 8th house is also the house of shared resources, and Aries here means Paul's energy was dominant and strong, and he probably very easily attracted other people's money to himself, as he had such a leader-like quality that others really trusted him with their resources. He also had Chiron here, which could have meant he experienced a lot of loss in his early life or past life that caused him to have a lesson to learn regarding control. So not allowing others to control him and also not dominating others due to past trauma would have been a challenge.
I still didn't really even know who I was making this movie. I had a 2-year-old daughter, and there was a lot going on, and I didn't feel like I had any control of my life. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, but I like to believe now that, I'm a little bit more in control, but I'm definitely a lot better with rolling with the punches and kind of dealing with things as they come my way.
We talked before about what would have been a need for boundaries in Paul's life, as he could have easily found himself doing too much for people. So not allowing other people to control him to the point where they are affecting his personal growth would have been important to correct early on. His 9th house was in the sign of Taurus and contained Mars. The 9th house is our philosophy life area. It affects our worldview, our views on education, and other cultures. Taurus coloring this house means Paul had very practical values, probably believed in hard work being the key to success and to getting what you want. This is someone who knows themselves and is very clear on their beliefs, probably not revering sentimentality, but instead relying heavily on reason and things with practical application. So he probably would not have been super spiritual. He was inspired not by mystical experience, but from physical evidence of his physical labor.
Also, my father was a contractor, and I got out there, and it was like, at the end of the day, you could look back and go, whoa, look what I did. Movies, you don't have that. You have what you feel you did, but you don't have anything tangible. It's like on this film, or now it's on this digital chip, and it gets sent off. There's nothing to show for it. So, in this one, I think the gauge was the heart, the output, knowing what you feel.
Paul, when he got the place up in Santa Barbara, he was so excited. It was the first time I'd seen him buy something where he was like, really like, I worked and I got this.
The focus is generally placed on the material world. Paul also had Mars here, and as a planet, Mars has a lot of vitality and vigor, and to be in the house of faraway travels and culture, and the earthly Taurus sign means that Paul loved to explore the outdoors. Just as indicated with Jupiter in his 5th, Mars in the 9th indicates an adventurous soul who loves being outside and appreciating nature.
Depends on location a lot of the time. But fortunately enough, where I reside, I live here in California, I have, I have access, and I go diving and, dive for lobsters, free dive a lot still, and spend a lot of time in and around the water. So whenever I can make the time, I do it. My perfect weekend of work. Off work, okay. I think for me, be something outdoors. I mean, I don't know if it would be, maybe it'd be a cool hike to like a removed waterfall with like a nice swimming hole. A lot of scenery with a lot of nature and animals, or maybe a diving weekend out at the islands. Someplace tropical would be nice. But definitely something having to do with the water and nature. Oh gosh, I really love Big Sur, Monterey, Carmel. Big fan of that area, and I love the redwood forests. The Channel Islands are incredible. Most of my time is spent, Santa Barbara North, my leisurely time. I was born and raised in Southern California. When I was younger, I spent a lot more time in San Diego and in Baja, Mexico. But as I've grown older, I appreciate more where it's more lush and more green. I especially am fond of the Pacific Northwest. So even as you press out of Northern California and into Oregon and into Washington, Vancouver and Canada, Vancouver Island, the San Juans, I love it up there. The rain's a little too much for me to live there full time, but as far as a place to visit's concerned, to me that's heaven on earth. I love that zone. It's magical, and there's nowhere else like it on earth. But the thing for me is, as much as I appreciate the ocean, earth sciences in general have always fascinated me. So the older I get, it's just specific as, say, to stuff that caters to the ocean. Like, for instance, I really like just the way everything really all comes together. So to me, I think it's more about the symbiotic relationships, and more, I think, just the earth science as a whole. Botany has really kind of taken a hold of me lately, and even birding, which sounds funny because I always thought when I was younger that was for old men. But I really enjoy it. And with that, a lot more photography, so photographing nature. I used to be a really big hunter, and what I found as I've gotten older is I enjoy taking photos of the wildlife more, because I can pull the trigger 100, 200, 300 times, and I can come back and see that animal the next day. So it's just kind of a realization that I've made really as of late, and the older I get, the more I appreciate that.
He wasn't working. He would be off somewhere on a boat or hiding under a tree or doing whatever he was doing.
He'd always say, like, I wanted to be a park ranger, make 28 grand a year and live in the wilderness. Like, that's really what he wanted to do.
There's a strong connection to the earth. Traveling and embracing new cultures comes easily to them, as well as foreign language. As a placement, it also emphasizes a love for learning. There's great passion for learning, as we previously discussed, as he certainly loved to expand his horizon.
Myself included in the few, on the early trips, I was really one of the only ones that didn't have any professional experience. And I realized that my skill set was limited, so I didn't like that feeling. As much as I picked up while we were there and in the field, I realized that there was more to learn. And that's a big part of it that really keeps me, I think, drawn, is we're only here one time, and I love the arena.
There's also high expectations for life and a great desire to do things requiring a lot of energy and enthusiasm. This is a strong leader. Other people love to learn from them because they're so smart and enthusiastic about what they have learned and willing to share that. Paul Walker's 10th house was in the sign of Gemini, as that is his midheaven sign as well. It also contained the planet Saturn. We discussed Paul's Gemini midheaven before. It just meant he was a jack of all trades, was known on a very public scale for his multiple interests, varied passion projects, and precise intellect. Having Saturn here in his life area of career means Paul was very disciplined in his career. This native would value being respected for his diligence in his career. Saturn here would also indicate a very ambitious person who finds long-lasting success when they do touch success. This is a practical person, so they usually reach success because they understand the importance of having a plan and following through. And as stated previously, there is no fear of hard work. So the philosophy with Saturn here is that if working hard gets one to a goal, there's no issue in doing that no matter how long it takes. Saturn here also indicates quality was very important in regards to Paul's work. Overworking oneself could also manifest here, as there's a strong emphasis on having something to show of oneself. Again, that practical nature showing up in Paul's chart. That could have been especially true when young, but the confidence gained through experience makes for very strong leaders as adults for these natives. This could stem from a very strong paternal figure in one's life. Paul talked about working with his dad growing up and grandfather, and he was probably really influenced by the prevalence of hard work by the men in his life.
I was brought up around cars. My grandfather actually raced stock cars for Ford back in the day in the late 1960s. He had the first 160 mile an hour plus Ford Falcon. I wish I could break it into kilometers for you, but I can't do that. Yeah, I grew up around cars, wrenching on cars, doing my own tune-ups and, rebuilding blocks and transmissions and doing that sort of thing. So, growing up as a kid, we had all the various, auto publications, all the magazines around the house. So I'm a car junkie.
You have to go to
commercials when I was 2 years old. And it was just always there. I did it throughout elementary school and that sort of thing. Although my life was real normal, I wasn't a Hollywood kid. I mean, I played Little League and I did that whole thing because my dad was really athletic.
This would make one's reputation to be that of a very serious worker and trustworthy individual. Paul's 11th house contains no planets, but it is in the sign of Cancer, further indicating a very loving and nurturing nature in regards to friendships and social groups he was associated with. He was obviously very philanthropic and showed how much he cared for the world by how he gave to it through his charities.
Always Mr. Jigglyfoot, And I said, we ought to start calling you St. Paul. All the nice things you do. And he goes, I appreciate it.
And lastly, his 12th house contained no planets as well, but was in the sign of Leo. The 12th house is what is hidden. We only show other people this very intimate part of ourselves when we feel the need to, and often the energy placed here seems to be exactly what we need to show the world, but we tend to hold it very closely. When released, we actually get great blessing, as it is considered a great gift to the world. It's like our gift, the gift of our energy. As I said, it's a very mysterious house, so sometimes I view the 12th house differently, but this is what I'm feeling for this video. Leo here would indicate to me that Paul was an even bigger force than he let on. He himself said he felt repressed a lot. This is a very brave person and someone who always wants to use his bravery to protect and help loved ones or beloved causes. The egoic sign of Leo is in this very inward house. So although Paul captured the attention of the world for a brief time he was on Earth, he probably could have done without fame. Success to him wasn't fame, but doing for others.
Especially with the success that I had back home in the States. I definitely liked it the first time I saw it, but I think, I don't know, there's nothing better than, for instance, I went to an amusement park just before coming out here, shortly before coming out here in California, and, just the random people coming up, giving you the pat on the back, telling you how much they liked your movie. That's, I think, probably the coolest thing.
He may have had great success even in his precious life that gifted him with the healthy ego he had in his life. And this confidence helped his efforts in this life, as he didn't need the spotlight, but nevertheless got it and used it to benefit the causes he was passionate about.
Name to get out of a speeding ticket?
No, I don't drop. If somebody drops their name to me, I just want to slam them harder. It doesn't matter what it is. So,
really?
Yeah, it's that shameless kind of, I don't buy into that at all.
Corny.
Yeah, even rolling up to clubs and stuff when there's a line and I got somebody with me, that, buddy will feel like he's got to do me a favor by running up to the bouncer and being like, yo, hey, that stuff's so embarrassing to me.
So you're like
caught up in your head and your game, and you don't allow all the hype to balloon your head, and you try to stay grounded, and you hang around with the people that, you've always known, and you stick with the things that you've always done, and in that, you kind of find base in reality. And, my buddies, man, I'll tell you that. My dad, my brothers, any one of them, if I were to step out of line, they'd kick the crap out of me, So
I met your dad, and he probably
would.
My family's pretty much the same.
The heartthrob stuff, the sex symbol stuff, you don't want to hear about it.
No.
Why?
It just makes it awkward, and half the time people know what's going on with me before I even know, which
Really?
It's a bit spooky. But Niall, this is an ensemble piece, all right?
Get over it. It's all about you, baby. Excuse me.
So that's all for Paul's houses. Now we're going to go into his tightly orbed aspects. So this one is 0 degrees, and this is Pluto square North Node. Now, this is a very powerful aspect. It would indicate that Paul had this internal tension from oscillating from his South Node tendencies to his North Node, so resisting the transformation that came with embracing the North Node for a long time. We discussed his North Node being in Cancer and how it was all about learning to embrace, focus on himself to achieve something great, but not just for himself, but also to help people. So it's like what we talked about before, that balance he had to find where he was helping not only himself, but others, but not too much, because the fact that one would possess so much inner power and confidence is a strength, but his focus was meant to be on what he did with that strength. So did he tap into his emotional nature and find that strength in that sensitivity he may have often resisted? Was he able to use that natural strength and power to transmute those issues with trusting people and the issues with being too self-reliant, and use the inner strength to overcome that? This aspect is all about letting go of the need of control, and this is a big theme in his aspects because he was very ambitious and probably didn't often know how to yield that power-loving nature. Next, we had Saturn square Pluto. So Pluto showing up again at 0 degrees. Now, this aspect would have reflected the negative side of Paul's need for stability and his innate disciplined attitude. The rigid beliefs could make one stubborn and could affect relationships. So this is someone who would excel in the material sense because that kind of perseverance is essential to success. But in terms of relations to others, it could cause an issue if it's not worked on. If one doesn't see the value in change and letting go of control and allowing oneself to grow. So we saw in this chart in the 8th house where he had Chiron, but was in the sign of Aries, that this is there's this want to change and grow, but there's this resistance that causes inner turmoil because the intuition is trying to speak, but the logical and practical reasoning, which is the way that Paul would have thought, would have caused this resistance. And it's something he would have had to overcome, letting go and fully embracing growth.
I still didn't really even know who I was making this movie. I had a 2-year-old daughter, and there was a lot going on, and I didn't feel like I had any control of my life. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, but I like to believe now that, I'm a little bit more in control, but I'm definitely a lot better with rolling with the punches and kind of dealing with things as they come my way.
He also had Saturn opposite North Node at 0 degrees, which means he may have avoided responsibility early on or at least resisted it. And this usually stems from having a stricter upbringing or having a log of responsibilities as a child. So one may grow to resent that as they grow up, when in fact they would benefit more from doing the opposite. So that's what the opposition means. It's just a little tug of war where one eventually learns the beauty of discipline. And we know that from the rest of his chart that Paul was no stranger to disciplining himself, especially in the area of his career. And he benefited a great deal from following through with his goals with a practical plan. So it's safe to say he eventually did learn to embrace discipline and responsibility. And it probably was a big lesson for him when he had his daughter especially. Next he had Neptune sextile Pluto. So Pluto shows up again, this time in a harmonious aspect. And this is a generational aspect, but it is at 1 degree, so it's a strong energy for him. And it just means that his energy was very necessary on the planet to move humanity forward in some way through his fearlessness and his progressive ideals about how to help the planet and others. So it's a very special aspect to have at such a tight orb, even though it is generational. It means you're a big part of this generation's progress. He would have also had Sun opposite Moon in his chart at 1 degree. This is a very powerful aspect. It's one of the most powerful aspects in astrology. To have this in his chart meant that Paul was constantly evolving through examination of his ego and his emotions. He learned a lot through how he related to people and their reactions to him, as well as how he felt about his reactive nature. So, for instance, this tug of war between wanting excitement and adventure, but also feeling like something is missing if that's all one experiences, because there's this deep need for nurturing and love and romance as well. So this balance needing to be had with what to exert and what to take in, and learning that fullness is inherent and cannot be given from a person or from an activity or vocation. There is a want to find the proper balance, and perhaps Paul found that. He had this fun and often chaotic and wild career in acting, especially with all the action movies that he did. And at the same time, he did date and was in a long-term relationship at the time of his death.
Success is balance in life. That's the most hard.
He couldn't quite walk away yet in his mind. And that's one thing that's like so killer. It sucks so bad about, you know, he never got to really enjoy like just watching his daughter grow up and enjoy everything he had worked so hard for. He was finally starting to really kind of put that together and like, and then he just got cut short.
Paul also had Jupiter trine Pluto at 1 degree in his chart as well. Pluto again showing up. So the theme of control and innate power shows up again. It gives an interest in issues that affect many people. Obviously, Paul had strong Aquarius in his chart and he had philanthropic interests. Jupiter trine Pluto imbues one with the gift of feeling the power they have over their own life and the lives of others. It's the ability to transform in Pluto combined with the vastness of Jupiter. So it's a very powerful aspect. It gives the native the ability to accomplish great things with great morality. And it obviously leads to a lot of luck with Jupiter right there. So it's it's like the more that one gives to others, the luckier, wealthier, and fulfilled they are in life. He also had Jupiter sextile Neptune at 2 degrees. This is a very beautiful aspect. It means Paul was a very hopeful and romantic person, and I did touch on that when I talked about his Venus sign. It's an ideal aspect. So these natives tend to have big dreams for humanity and end up doing a lot of philanthropy work. It's also a very natural affinity, a true love for people in the world, and they do it without wanting anything in return. It's just who they are. But they get blessed anyway, as reflected by nature. They put out a lot of good, so they receive it back always, because the more blessed they are, it's like the more they give. So of course the universe and people continue to bless them. These people are also creative because of their romantic view of the world, and Paul was certainly. There's a high morality and a very big imagination here. So this comes with big ideas that are often followed through to make things better for oneself and others. It's a very compassionate aspect to have in one's chart in a very tight orb. He also had ascendant square midheaven. There isn't much information on this aspect because they aren't planets, but my interpretation is that it would mean that Paul had felt in some way bothered by the fact that people saw him one way, for example, as simple as just a sex symbol who likes cars, when in fact he felt differently and wanted to be seen as who he truly was. It's just a little clash of the ego and the image. And he also had Venus square Jupiter at 3 degrees. This is a cool aspect because although it's a square, these planets are so benevolent, it's really not that big of a challenge to overcome. This aspect indicates a very fun, happy-go-lucky person. It would explain his popularity, as these natives are very popular and have strong charisma, that it can drive romantic partners crazy because they don't often commit easily, and raising kids is something that they tend to avoid as it doesn't align with their fun-loving and free lifestyle. They eventually work usually in creative fields, but it's not an obsessive, I must do this kind of thing. It's more like I'm good at this, so I do it for the money, so I can afford to live my life with financial freedom and to basically fund what I really want to do. Dolly Parton, for example, the country singer, also has this placement in her chart. And if you look at Dolly speak, she's so happy and go lucky and doesn't have kids. And she said she feels she's still married because she barely sees her husband. And you can tell she enjoys her freedom. She's also very charming and people are just drawn to her, and she's had a very lucky life, seemingly free of stress. So it's a good aspect to have if you have it and relate to that interpretation. Let me know.
Things that I'm interested in. I mean, if acting goes really, really well for me, I mean, realistically, I could work like maybe 6-8 months out of the year and have the remainder of the time to pursue my other endeavors.
This next aspect is very obvious. Paul had Mars trine ascendant. I also have this aspect. It just means that this person would have a lot of visible energy. They like doing daring things like driving fast and have a lot of love for adventure, as they are very energetic, and there's a sexiness about their physicality. It's a divine masculine kind of energy. Like these people are tuned into that energy, and it's very alluring to other people because they embody strength and power and courageousness. He also had Venus sextile North Node at 4 degrees in his chart. This aspect would indicate learning through love in this lifetime. It would bring out compassion in the native and make them a natural peacekeeper, someone who brings love out of everyone and who shares their love. Connections to other people often bring great lessons about unconditional love, and these people would make great friends and lovers. Paul had many great friends, and they all commended him on how great of a friend that he was, someone who always looked.
You know, and Shrek's right there. Shrek! Hey, now Shrek! You know what? Hey, Shrek, straighten out your shirt real quick. Straighten out your shirt. Yeah, he's got this thing going right now, 1,000 challenge. Check him out. I'm giving him a little pop. JesseBrizendine.com. And we're doing this stuff with Marlon, and we're catching, we're tagging them, releasing them, putting all kinds of electronic equipment on them. Yeah. And Michael Dolmeyer, super cool guy, just a mastermind. I mean, the guy's just brilliant when it comes to billfish, you know, when it comes to shark, elephant, seal. He is the go-to guy.
Out. It's a beautiful legacy to leave behind because people would associate this individual with love and healing. There's an ease in their social interactions because they come from a very open and loving place, so they create a lot of harmony around themselves, and people would love to be around that. And obviously it brings creative interest and talent, and this talent would bring more love and healing into the world and profession, and obviously a lot of luck. So it's a great benefit to one's connections, and it would certainly indicate a popular person and someone who is popular for good reason. So this is a very beautiful aspect.
I was oblivious to the clicks, you know, so I think that's a good thing. High school was good to me. I had a really good time. It's a good experience.
To have. Paul also had Venus trine Saturn at 4 degrees. This aspect means Paul was disciplined in his career, a hard worker who earned the respect of his superiors, and someone who was sensible in attitude. There is a 2 feet on the ground kind of energy here, and he certainly had a lot of Virgo energy in his chart. This would have made Paul well-mannered in his interactions, always having respect, and he'd always have been a loyal friend and partner. It's a very dependable and trustworthy aspect. It means he was good, as indicated by Venus, at commitment, which is indicated by Saturn. Be it things or people, there's a balance to one's approach, knowing what one wants and not getting overly emotional during disagreements with others. Paul also had Mercury trine Jupiter. This is a very cool aspect. It enhances one's communicative abilities, and this gives someone a very broad outlook on life and makes them well-versed in different interests. So they have an ability to talk to anyone with ease, very funny, and this positive, easygoing nature makes them fun to be around and very generous to friends. Jupiter is a benefic planet and an expansive planet. It's the largest, and in this aspect, it enhances one's thoughts and communication ability, making them progressive and intelligent. They think logically and to think of very big ideas for one's future, or the future of the world as a whole. So these natives are often charitable and value freedom for all because they themselves appreciate the freedom in their thoughts and ideas and want the same for others. These natives are very intelligent and love acquiring more and more knowledge all throughout their lives, and Paul was very intelligent in a number of topics as we discussed previously. Now I wanted to put some honorable mentions in here in terms of aspects. He had Neptune opposite midheaven, which would indicate a highly sensitive soul, someone who benefited from guidance in exploring one's emotions and perceptions. So it's a very perceptive energy, and it would have increased his ability to really be a good talker and friend because he would have felt what others needed. We explored this when discussing his emotional capacity, and this aspect just proved that even more. He also had Mercury sextile Neptune, which is kind of the same thing, this intuition about others' intentions and what they mean. It made him sympathetic to others, and he would have always preferred, as we said before, to be around other positive and kind people. Mean people or aggressive people he could deal with because he was a good communicator and a confident person, but he preferred peace in every regard in terms of who he surrounded himself with. Also, with Mercury being there, with Neptune, it made his voice very pleasing, giving him a good ability to express himself through art forms like acting. He also had Mercury conjunct Pluto, making him very persuasive with a penetrating stare and a very powerful and effective speaker that could influence many people. As you know, you can recall there was so much Pluto in his aspects and his really tight orbs, meaning this is someone with a very powerful presence. So the persuasiveness is due to one's keen interests that give a large scope of knowledge on particular subjects and the ability to effectively and passionately communicate that. So others trusting what you have to say, and it's a very alluring quality. And he also had Pluto trine midheaven, which would have given him a very strong drive to succeed. There is also an interest in learning various things with this aspect because there's knowledge that doing so would help reach goals. Knowledge is power with that aspect, but it can also lead to risky behavior because there's an impulse to go too far in one's interest, an obsession with wanting to know how far you can dig into something, wanting the ultimate knowledge of a subject because you know it could add another dimension to your success. And if you gain more knowledge, you get more success. So it's very intense Pluto energy. They know what they want very early in life, and that's to have it all. And they want to use all their inner resources and knowledge to get that. He also had Moon opposite ascendant, and although it was at 7 degrees, it's still important to note because it ties other things we already discussed together. It's a very loving and sensitive aspect. It means he was very emotionally supported by perhaps his mother as a child, and it's what made him a great lover as an adult. But we talked before about him perhaps attracting or being attracted to women who were probably a little overly emotional or unstable emotionally, and this could have been due to feeling so loved by a mother figure that he'd want to be that way to others, mothering them in a sense. So having younger partners, I know his girlfriend when he died was 23 and he was 40. So it could be a detriment if boundaries aren't placed. And we know that from his chart that boundaries were necessary for him because he was so generous in nature. And the last honorable mention I wanted to discuss was he had Jupiter trine midheaven. He had that at 8 degrees, but still it brought him luck to his career because people were happy to bet on him and share their resources with him because they knew he would do good with it. It's a person with an innate understanding of their social responsibility, and they're always involved in purposeful work, and people see that and they easily gain support. Also, because this native would love to learn, so they don't mind, they would love to learn, so they don't mind humbling themselves, and bosses love that. One of his loosest aspects was Venus conjunct Uranus, but I feel every aspect is part of the whole and makes sense. And this aspect just meant there was a lot of changeability in his romantic relationships. So dating a lot, as we said, as well as dating women who had more moody personalities because it was exciting and something different. And with Uranus and Venus, there's this blend of individuality with the arts, basically putting oneself in all of their creative work. So it's a creatively expressive person, if that makes sense. So if you look at all Paul's movies, he did a lot in his career. They all had something to do with an interest or hobby that he already had. Every role he took, you can tell he took because he already had an interest in that theme. And his movies are all very Paul Walker. You can only see him in those roles, like Into the Blue and Fast and Furious and his last movie, Hours. It really goes on and on. So those are his aspects. Everything in your birth chart is a theme, and it all makes sense. So a lot of the aspects in one's chart are going to follow a similar pattern, reflecting one's innate nature. And we can see from the rest of the aspects and the ones we've already discussed that he was very dependable, strong, powerful, creative, artistic, confident, intelligent, charming, and overall compassionate and loving human being. And I believe the world lost a great deal with his death, but gained so much with his life and what his legacy continues to give, particularly through his still standing foundations. So I really enjoyed doing this video. It all came about so naturally. I started thinking of Paul Walker, and he's always in my heart, and it's something that's interesting. A lot of people comment that on videos about him and interviews and stuff. People say he's always in my heart, and it's true for me as well. He's one of those humans you just never forget and think of fondly from time to time. Just an amazing soul. I'm glad he was here, and I wish he could have been here for the world today. And I was always a fan. I was a teenager when he died, and I always found him to be very gorgeous and very cool. And now getting back into his spirit and watching his interviews, seeing how he carried himself and spoke, I see the reason for that appeal. He was a real man's man. He had a very masculine interest. He was an outdoorsman for sure, and he wasn't a toxic masculine. He had a compassionate nature, and I think women love him as much as men. His spirit reminds you, of true masculinity. Someone who's attuned to who they are as a man. And he did very daring things and had a lot of cool hobbies, and his strength and bravery was really appealing. So I just wanted to show that, and I hope that his spirit came through in this video and was reflected through discussing his birth chart. You can kind of get an idea of who he was as a person and not just a public figure. So this has been really, really cool. And it started out as a genuine interest, and I realized halfway through research that I could do a video on him, and it's been a gift for sure. He's really helped me, even through spirit, to realize some things about my life, and I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you appreciate the video for what it is, an educational video, but also a celebration of a good human that lived, and I hope still lives by inspiring you all. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. If you have any requests, comment below, and I'll see if it's feasible to do a video on them. I'll also be doing some spiritual topics as well, not just astrology. I'm doing a video diving into kind of what we already talked about just now with masculine and feminine energy and the importance of them operating together in a cooperative and healed way. So subscribe for that, and I'll try to do my videos more frequently, but they do take a lot of research, so just bear with me. Thank you again, and see you next time.
Yeah, this is something he did without really wanting recognition for it, you know. He could have easily always thrown his name all over the organization. But he wanted it to grow organically, and he wanted to make a difference. I mean, there's not a whole lot other that can be said that's already been said about my brother. But he was a great guy. He was my big brother, and I looked up to him very much. He was like a Tom Sawyer. You know, just Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah. What do you want people to remember about him the most?
He was the real deal. He's a fine man, and he's the kind of man you want to be like. If you want to liken yourself or follow in the footsteps of somebody, it should be Paul William Walker IV, because he was as fine a person as there ever was, and he would have gotten better.
Just do guy shit, you know?
Oh, I thought I was going for sure.
It was his playground.